Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 168. Why would I care what other people think of me when they don't even like themselves? Marcus Aurelius.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Film Convert. Film Convert I used heavily on creating the cinematic look I got on my film, This Is Meg. It helps you give your digital video footage a beautiful cinematic look of film instantly. Whether you're shooting on a GoPro, a DSLR, a Red, an Alexa, a Blackmagic, it doesn't matter. Film Convert has created specific camera profiles for almost every camera on the planet so it can adjust to your footage. Film Convert gives you the power to create amazing looking cinematic images with just a couple clicks. And of course, because you guys are part of the Indie Film Hustle tribe, you get 10% off Film Convert by using the coupon code HUSTLE. But you can try this software for free, guys. Just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/film convert. That's indiefilmhustle.com/film, CONVERT. This show is also sponsored by the iTunes release of This Is Meg, the movie that you guys have been listening about for the past year. And it's finally going to be available on iTunes on August 4th. Just head over to thisismeg.com/iTunes. And if you pre-order it, you get a nice discount before August 4th and be the first one to get it as soon as it gets released. Now, today, guys, we're going to talk about a book that I just read a little while ago. And it really changed the way I look at things and look at the creative process, and I wanted to share it with you. It's called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. Now, Steven Pressfield wrote a movie or a book that was based on a movie or movie based on a book called The Legend of Bagger Vance, directed by Robert Redford and starring Matt Damon and Will Smith. But since those days of being a writer, and he still writes fiction as well, he's written a score of books on the creative process, one of the most popular ones being The War of Art. So I picked this book up after watching some videos online that people talking about it. So I picked it up, and it kind of changed everything for me as a filmmaker, as a creative, and I wanted to share a little bit of a few tips that he talked about in the book. And at the end of the episode, I'm going to be running the first ever Indie Film Hustle contest to get a free copy of The War of Art, plus a handful of other books that he has written as well. So stay tuned to the end for that information. So guys, the first thing I want to talk about is the biggest lie anybody tells you is that they're not afraid, that they're not scared. There's a lot of guys and girls out there who are just like, oh, I'm not afraid of doing that. I'm not afraid of doing that. It's just this, or it's just that. You know, kind of like when we were younger, or even now, if you're guys, you're afraid of walking up to a girl because you're afraid of being shot down or looking like a fool. But everybody else in your crew always says, oh, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. She's just not pretty enough. Or, she's just not my style or whatever. But they don't go up and talk to her. So most people tell you that they're not afraid, but you have to understand that everybody is afraid. Steven talks about a story about the legendary actor Henry Fonda, who even at the age of 75, before every show, he would throw up. Before every live play that he would do, he would throw up. He was scared. Even at his status in life, after 50 odd years of acting in some of the greatest movies of all time, he was still afraid. But the big difference is that he's a professional. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between an amateur and a professional, which is one of the big themes of the book. An amateur's mindset is to conquer fear first and then act. So all these other things have to be in place before I actually go out and do something. Now, the professional mindset is different. They know they're afraid, but they keep going. The pro knows that fear will always be there, But once they understand that the fear is there, they get to work. And that is the big difference between an amateur and a professional. You have to understand that a professional has true love. They have true love in what they do. They have true love in the process, not the outcome, but the process, the grind, the everyday showing up for work. That is what a professional does. They asked Steven Pressfield once, what time, when do you write all the time or do you write when inspiration hits? And he had one of the greatest stories ever. He's like, I only write when inspiration hits, but fortunately for me, inspiration hits every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that's where he decided to summon his muse. Now, a muse obviously comes from Greek mythology, where they inspire you. They're there to just dazzle, a little bit of fairy dust on top of you to give you that inspiration to make the great movie, to write the great script, to paint the great painting, whatever that creative inspiration is, the muse is there. But she is very, very difficult to have come around. So for the professional understands that if you show up to work every day at a certain time and you do that work, whether it be for an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever that extended amount of time is, the muse will know, oh, there they are. There he is. There she is. I'm just going to, okay, that's where they're going to be every day. And then the muse works through you. That is what Steven Pressfield says. And it's a really great concept because you're always waiting for inspiration to hit. Well, unless inspiration knows where you are all the time, according to Steven Pressfield, they won't know when to throw you that inspiration. You just have to go out there and do the work, which has been a big theme of this podcast and of Indie Film Hustle in general. The professional understands that they are in love with what they do. They do it because they have to do it, that there is no other choice for them. They don't do it on the weekends. They don't do it on the side. They figure out a way to reconstruct their life to be able to do the work, to be able to do the work that they were put on this earth to do. And that is one of the biggest themes of this insane book. Now, understand, fear is good. I love fear. Fear is a great motivator. But it's only bad when it stops you from moving forward. Now, Pressfield calls fear resistance. And that resistance is a war that you fight every morning when you wake up. Some days you win, some days you lose. But the professional wins more than he ever loses or she ever loses. When you wake up in the morning and you're going to go, I have to go work out because I've got to get into shape. Resistance is there to tell you, no, you'll be fine. Work out tomorrow. Just let's go have some breakfast. You're really tired. And that conversation happens in your mind. Tell me it doesn't. I'm sure this happens to a lot of people listening to this right now. Or you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh God, I don't want to go up there and write. I don't even know what I'm going to write about, blah, blah, blah. And then the resistance tells you, no, you're right. You shouldn't write right now. Why don't you go out, go to Starbucks, get a coffee, sit down, do some people watching. Maybe something will hit you and you can start writing. That's not what a professional does. A professional shows up, gets up at 9 o'clock, and when that voice hits, they go, I don't care. I'm going to do this no matter what. Resistance is tricky. Resistance or fear, whichever way you like to look at it, is a very tricky thing. Resistance will tell you things that you want to hear and make very logical arguments towards it. But it's not helping you move forward. Let me ask you a question, and I'm sure this has happened to many people listening to this podcast. How many times have you had this huge dinner? You're absolutely stuffed, and then they bring out the cheesecake. Now, you shouldn't eat it because you've definitely gotten more calories in that day than you needed. But inside your mind, someone tells you, hey, why don't you eat that? It's okay. You'll work out tomorrow. And then you go, okay, fine. So you eat it. And then later that night, when you're taking your clothes off and you're looking in the mirror before you go to bed, that same voice will tell you, look at you, you fat pig. Why'd you eat that cheesecake? Don't you know better? It's amazing. But your mind or resistance is a very tricky trickster, if you will. The one concept that Pressfield talks about a lot in this book is that the scarier the fear, the more beneficial it is to your journey and to the growth and development of yourself. The more true you are to yourself, the scarier it becomes. Do you think it was easy for me to launch Indie Film Hustle, to launch a podcast and hope that everyone liked what I had to say or I could help people out there? It was scary. It's still scary, you know? I have critics like everybody else, but you can't stop because of it. And I decided to break through, and every morning I show up to work. I show up and I do content. I write content. I put things out for you guys. I create courses. I try to do what I can for Indie Film Hustle. You know, I write my scripts, my scripts. I get projects ready. Every day I show up. But it was scary. It was extremely scary. And looking back at my whole life, the scarier the proposition, the more growth and reward I got from challenging that fear, challenging that resistance. When I moved from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and moved to LA, it took me a year and a half, almost 2 years of research and back and forth and how am I going to do this and blah, blah, blah. It took me a while before I finally pulled the trigger because it was such a scary proposition. I was moving across the country, knew literally 2 to 3 people in Los Angeles, had no job prospects, and I literally was just going to show up and things were going to happen. And I did. And that was the best, this probably arguably the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And yet it has been the most rewarding and one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. And to give you another example of something that I'm doing in my life that was scary and to see if I could do it is that I've, you know, I don't know if you guys have seen or not, but I was a little bit on the heavier side. I was probably one of the heaviest I've ever been while I was making This Is Meg. And shooting that movie was very difficult physically for me because I was, you know, had that big rig on top of me and doing all that kind of stuff. And, you know, as you get older, things, you know, start getting a little tougher to do, but they don't have to. So what I decided to do is something that was pretty scary to me, but I thought the fear of my health and not doing well and with my health and not being able to do as much as I want to do physically was scarier than the proposed thing that I am doing. So I am currently on a 30-day juice cleanse. Now, I know a lot of you are going, oh, God, Alex, you're doing a juice cleanse. That's so LA. Oh, my God. Why would you do something like that to yourself? Well, the reason I did it is, first of all, I wanted to see if I could do it. And I'm almost done with it. I'm almost at a month. And just so you guys know, the mental fortitude that you need to do to just drink juice all the time for 30 days straight, while there is pizza and there is snacks, because I have, you know, 2, you know, young twin girls who, you know, have all sorts of little things in the house and they're eating, you know, going to birthday parties and seeing cake and things like that. It takes a hell of a training. And if you can make it through that, I felt like if I could do this, I can do pretty much anything. And I've lost about 20 to 25 pounds. I feel better than I've ever felt before. All my pains that I had in my body went away. My strength has started to come back. My mind is very clear, very sharp. I'm actually able to do more work. That's probably why you've seen an uptick in productivity on Indie Film Hustle because I'm doing only juices. And again, I'm not drinking apple juice the entire time. I'm actually freshly making juice every day from greens and carrots and apples and all sorts of different fruits and vegetables. And I've done a lot of research before I jumped into that. And by the way, I am not suggesting that anyone do that if they want to try to lose weight or anything like that. If you want to get more information, The movie that really got me started on it is an amazing documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. You can watch it for free, I think, anywhere. I'll put the links on the descriptions on Netflix, on Amazon, even on their website. They're giving it away for free at this point. It's done so well and has kind of changed a lot of people's lives. And, this is not something easy for me to talk about. I've never spoken about this ever, especially not publicly to a large audience. But it's something I think I'm doing. And it's honestly scary to talk about this. This is not something I've ever want to talk about. Most people don't want to talk about that. But I'm doing it because I feel that I could help somebody. I hope that someone listening will hear this podcast and maybe do something that will inspire them to change the way they do things in life and follow their dream, whether that be as being a screenwriter, a filmmaker, an artist of some sort, or just trying to lose some weight and get healthy so you could do more with your family, your kids, and achieve more in life and have a better quality of life. But this is a scary thing. But you know what? As I sat here, believe it or not, as I sat here debating whether or not to talk about this, resistance came into my mind and it started to come in really strong. And this is a great example of like a live version of resistance in action. So as I was thinking here debating, should I talk about this? All the things started coming up in your head, like, what are they going to say? What are they going to do? People are going to criticize you. They say this, that. And I said, you know what? It's more, I can do more good by talking about it than not talking about it. So I am putting myself out there for you guys, for the tribe, and hopefully that example will help you guys do what you need to do and move forward in your careers and in your life. So the main lesson that I think you guys should take away from this is you just got to do the work, guys, and you got to show up, whether inspiration's there or not, every day doing whatever that might be that you want to get done. Just do it. I've interviewed and spoken to remarkable and legendary screenwriters, and all of them do this. They all just show up every day and write, no matter what. Not one of them has just like, I just have I have one or two scripts. All of them have like 20 scripts, done. And they're being shopped around and they're making a living doing it because they just keep doing it, keep working. So don't fall into the trap. Fight resistance and just break through. And you got to love what you do and just go do it. This is a very simple concept, but very difficult to do. But once you break through, the world is yours. So guys, as I promised, I'm going to be giving away copies of The War of Art that Mr. Steven Pressfield himself sent me to give you, the tribe. And he also amazingly gave me just a ton of other books to give you guys. So I'm here to give them, man. I'm like Santa Claus. I'm handing out knowledge left and right. So the books that I'm going to be giving away are copies of The War of Art, another book which is amazing called Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit, and why that is and what you can do about it. And another book is The Authentic Swing, which are notes from writing his first novel, and The Knowledge, which is a novel based around about the time that he was a cab driver in New York and he had fallen to resistance and not writing, and what he did to break through and how he became the author of The War of Art. So if you want a free copy of these books and you want to enter this contest, all you have to do is mail me, not email. I want you to actually old school mail me. Write it, type it up, whatever, put it in an envelope and send it. And I'm going to leave my address in the show notes. The show notes are indiefilmhustle.com/168. Address will be there. Also links to everything we've talked about in this episode, the Big Fat Sick and Nearly Dead documentary. I'll put there, as well as links to all the books that he did. He did another great book called Turning Pro, which is amazing. Another one called Do the Work. All of those I'll put in the show notes. But I need you to mail me a story. I want you to mail me a story. You could shoot it on video and pop it on a DVD and send it over, or you can write me a letter and tell me a story where you broke through. You decided to not fall victim to resistance and are doing something every day to change your life, to change your filmmaking and your creative life, and moving forward towards your dreams and goals. And the best stories will win. And I got a bunch of these books. So the faster you guys can get these stories out to me, the faster I'll get you these books, okay? And there might be a surprise or two, just might be a little surprise or two that I might toss into the box as well for you guys in the winners. And the best stories will be read on the podcast. And let me know in the letter if you want to use your first name, last name, or no name and make it anonymous. But I will share them with the tribe on the podcast. And if you want to promote anything you're doing, any movies or anything like that, put it in there and I'll give you a shout out as well. So remember, if you want to be part of this contest, just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/168. There you'll get the mailing address. Send me over their story, and winners will get these books and get some knowledge thrown at them for free. And if there are anybody internationally that wants to be part of this that are not in the U.S. Or Canada, please send it over. And I might not be able to send you all the books, but I'll at least be able to send you one or two of the books if you win the contest. So it is open to the entire world, and I will ship it out to you guys. And I want to thank you so much to Steven Pressfield for sending us this amazing bounty of books to hand out to the tribe. So, Steven, if you're listening, thank you very much, and I hope to have you on the show soon. Thank you guys for listening, and remember to fight the resistance. So, guys, as always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.